more restrictive policy in Europe, more business for human trafficking.
Accogliere queste persone, integrare queste persone, questo è il modo di dare dignità a questi morti, ma anche ai sopravvissuti.
መጀመሪያ ምስ መጻና መጀመሪያ ምስ አተና ናብዚ ናይ ላምፔዱሳ ዳርጋ 800 ሜትሮ የተሪፍና ነይሩ አቲና ኢልና ንጽበ ነርና ዘድሆነ ህይወት ክሞጽና ተሐጉዝና እንዳተጸበና ከለና
Avevano visto l'avvicinarsi di due imbarcazioni che si sono avvicinati, una delle quali ha circonavigato intorno a loro e pensavano che eravano ormai salvi, invece non è stato così. Queste due imbarcazioni hanno visto, poi se ne sono andati senza soccorrere, senza avvisare le autorità competenti.
ክስታዩ እቲ ማለት ዝኾነ ገለ ነገር ክንገብር ኣለና ንኽንድሕን ህይወትና ማለት እዩ ስለዚ ኣነ ከም ዝመስለኒ ኣብቲ ግዜቲ ናመርከብ ማይ ትመልእ ስለ ዝነበረት ብታሕቲ ዳርጋ ክሳብ ሞተር ኩሉ መሊኡ ነይሩ ካብ ዓቕምና ንላዕሊ ኮይኑ
nel tentativo di attirare l'attenzione il capitano di questa barcone ha incendiato una maglietta imbevuta di benzina sollevandola sopra, quindi sperava con il fuoco di attirare l'attenzione di quelle barche che si stavano allontanando, e però cadendo pezzi di quello straccio sulla barca che c'erano gocce di benzina e ha incendiato tutto, quindi lo spostamento della gente per fuggire dal fuoco ha sbilanciato il barcone che poi si è capovolto e da lì è andato colato a picco, la gente è cominciata a morire, tanti che non sapevano neanche nuotare, alcuni erano per la prima volta che vedevano il mare.
ምሳኻ ብሂወት ዝነበሩ ሰባት ሞይቶም ክትሪኦም ከለኻ ክንደይ ቆልዑ ክንደይ ራእይ ዝነበሮም ሰባት ክንደይ ኣዴታት በቃ ኩሉ ሬሳ ኮይኑ ክትሪኦ ከለኻ እቲ ዝፈጥረልካ ስምዒት
che si faccia prevenzione che queste persone non siano costrette ad affrontare viaggi di questo tipo, che non rischino la vita, prevenzione ai conflitti, prevenzione dalle spoliazioni dei diritti loro, perché queste persone sono disperati al punto di accettare pericoli di questo tipo, quindi bisogna prevenire che queste persone siano gettate in questa disperazione.
مصر على الارض لم نفعل شيء هنالك قد ننظر اليه لكن لا يدرنا شيء اذا حتى مؤدات الدين حتى نحن كان نسير بها ليس لدينا شيء وعليكم ان نرجو منكم بليز المساعده.
Ils ont dit qu'ils vont venir, on ne voit pas. Déjà avant, on ne voit pas. Il y a deux personnes qui sont mortes ici même.
هذا الضحايا قد تكون يدينا ضايعة، نحن لم نتحمل، نحن 4 أيام هنا في وسط المتوسط، لم نملك أي شيء نأكله حتى الآن منذ الآن، أطفال هنا حالنا في مأساة صعبة جدا.
Se non hai le spalle larghe e un appoggio forte, per me il mio appoggio è la mia fede e la preghiera, il rischio è enorme. Il rischio di finire anche in clinica psichiatrica è reale.
عشان وين ليش النجار زي النجار تحبنا نحن شيء
Candidato al premio Nobel per la pace, che voi tutti conoscerete probabilmente come l'angelo dei profughi.
More restrictive policy in Europe, more business for human trafficking. Da metà maggio in poi, fino a tutta l'estate, fino quasi metà ottobre, è un continuo di telefonate che arrivavano, quindi era difficile poter dormire la notte.
Thank you, Father Mussie. Please take now the time to comment this and to say what you want to say in addition to this meeting.
Okay, thank you for inviting me. I want to greet our friends Carolina and Vincent. Already, both of them, he say very well all the issue about the Mediterranean, about the trafficking, about all. But the point is, first, we need to deal to find solution at the root in the origin country. Why these people he put in danger his life, he risked his life in the desert, in the Mediterranean Sea. Why these people he flee from his origin country? Normally is not adventure for many of them, because like my people, many of Eritrean, especially our young people, he flee from the country because in the country he don't have any perspective for his future. The only prospect he have is military service for so long time without end. So if you don't have the freedom to choose for your life, especially the young people, he need alternative solution. That's why many of them he flee from the country, because inside the country you don't have freedom. You don't have freedom to speak, no freedom for press, no freedom for religion, because many minority religion is persecuted. Even you don't have freedom to move from place to place. You don't have freedom to choose what kind of study to do, what kind of job to do. You don't have the freedom. That's why many of them he flee. If we see what is going in Ethiopia, especially in the North Ethiopia, in these last 2 years, still going the war. What is going in Somalia? What is going in South Sudan, in Sudan? So all the Horn Africa is in situation, very complicated situation, in fire, in famine, in a dictatorship. So all this is the root of the problem, push them to go out. But even when these people is not protected in the transit country, we have a lot of refugees camps around, even in Horn Africa. For Eritreans, you have refugees camp in Ethiopia, in Sudan, in Uganda, in Kenya. But what is the condition of this refugees camp? Where is this refugees camp? Most of the time is the very remote area, totally depressed area, without any access for them to the school, to healthcare, to many other facilities. So especially the young people, he can't stay there for so long years. Because I visit myself some of these refugees camp. I talk with the young people. He say, I tell you what he say, Vincent, before. We need to tell them, to explain them the risk of his journey. But when I go there, I tell them about the risk during his journey in the desert, in Libya, all this. The question raised by these young people, he say, yes, we know all this We have this information, but we need alternative solution. What is the alternative? We need to have access to the school, but we don't have money. So we need to create scholarship for us to study here in Africa, not only to go abroad. To study in Africa, we need scholarship to go to the high school, to technical school, to university, but who take care of us? Who pay the expenses? If we abandon them in the refugees camp with any perspective for the future, these people try to flee, to find a way to reach better future in Europe or in other place. So that's why we ask a lot of time to European Union. You need to create protection in the neighbor country, in the transit country, but the refugees camp is not the enough protection. Even most of the time, the refugees camp is not safety place. What we see in some countries like Sudan, when the traffickers come inside the refugees camp to kidnap the people, to sell them at the border between Libya, Sudan, and Egypt. So if even the refugees camp is not safety place, because most of the time the security belongs to the country who hosts this refugees camp. But if some of this military is corrupted, is linked with the traffickers, he cooperates with the traffickers, he sells them. So this issue, especially the security issue, is very, very important. We need to create safety place for them, but we need also to create for them dignified life. We need to give them perspective for his future. That means access for education, for healthcare, for work. That the small experience like in Uganda is positive. In Uganda, have the most refugees is allowed them to stay in the city, to stay or even in the farmer area. Most of them to bring a land to be farmer. That is why to have possibility to have a choice. This is how to protect. The third point is we need to create legal access. We need to create legal access. That means we need to have, as European Union, we need to have a resettlement program. Huge number, not what is going now with the humanitarian corridor. With humanitarian corridor, yes, is good example, but very few, for few cases, very small. We have thousands and thousands of refugees only in the sub-Saharan African countries. So we need to have big resettlement program organized by European Union to give access, especially for those very vulnerable people, for those very persecuted by different cases, maybe political, maybe religious, maybe even ethnical. So we have a lot of people persecuted in his country. So we need really international protection. But we need to have this legal access. These are the 3 points. Then about what is going in the Mediterranean Sea. European Union in this last 20 years, he tried to build wall, different kind of wall, with a process, Rabat process, with the Khartoum process, with the memorandum with Libya. He's renewed a few days ago. But all this instrument, all this process, all this agreement is not to protect the people, to protect those vulnerable people. Only to create obstacles, to build wall. But what is going behind that wall? What is going in the Libya detention centers? We know, we have the testimony. You see what is the video shown by Vincent. I have also many other videos like that. Is what is happening in Libya, what is happening in Sudan, what is happening in Egypt. So these agreements, these process or memorandum is not to protect the people, those vulnerable people. Is only to create obstacles. That means he put in danger more and more. The traffickers is happy because the traffickers is there to offer alternative, but more dangerous and more expensive. That's why we need the legal access. If we want to fight the traffickers, the only way to fight the traffickers is when we are able to offer for the refugees safety place and legal access. The third point is about the NGOs who go to rescue the people in the Mediterranean. I am involved in the rescue program since 2003. Since that time, we asked to the European Union to have a project in the Mediterranean for research and rescue. He don't do nothing until 2014 when Italy, he put the project Mare Nostrum for 1 year. Then, after he closed that program, our expectation is that we can have another project that similar like that, but at European level. But he don't do that. Why? This is the duty of the state to research and rescue the people in danger. The NGOs replace the state because the state is not there. Is not there to save the people. Why we have in this last 25 years we have already more than 40,000 people he died in the Mediterranean. So where is the states? Where is the European Union? Why you don't have a project to rescue and to research and rescue program for these people? The NGOs is there now to save the life from after 2014. That is the point. Why you now to try to criminalize the NGOs or to create obstacles for the NGOs? Okay, you don't want to have the NGOs, but we need to have European project there to research and rescue the people. Otherwise, that means the European Union he want to accept thousands of migrants to continue to die in the Mediterranean Sea. That's not human. That is not humanity. That is not civilization. That is not democracy. So we need to have a program by European Union, or we need to cooperate with the NGO, the civil organization, what he's doing already his job to save the life of many thousands of people. We need to say thank you to the NGOs, not to criminalize them. At least this is my short testimony. Then if you have some question, I am here. Just only to add something about the refugees camp or the urban refugees. Yes, we have a lot of urban refugees, but also Vincent, he know very well what is going, for example, in Sudan. Most of the time, the police he arrests them, he treats them badly, and he asks them also to pay. I denounced this a few weeks ago with UNHCR in Khartoum. The police, daily he go to find the refugees, especially the Eritrean refugees. He arrested them. He tell them, if you want to go to release, you need to pay $500. This become like a business. We have the same situation in Kenya, even in Ethiopia. We have problem because that is related also with the ethnical problem because is a conflict there with Tigray. So he arrests them in the city, the urban refugees in Addis Ababa, to bring them, to obligate them to go back to the refugees camp. So it's not easy to say now our refugees is free to stay in the city, but not in all the countries is the same condition. Just to add this. Thank you.
You know, thank you very much for the Mussie.
Just to say, yes, Vincent, he say this issue about many of them who come from, especially from African sub-Saharan countries, not all of them he flee from war or something. But the point is, yes, someone even he flee from the country for economy reason. But during his journey, these people he become victim of trafficking, victim of violence, victim of abuse. So his condition from his origin, from his departure, is totally changed. So the point is, when he arrived in Europe, most the asylum system is based, if you come from this country, you have the right to be recognized refugee. But you don't recognize all the story of this person during his journey. His condition is totally changed. He is already his victim of different, victim in the prison of Libya, victim in the desert, victim. So he need to recognize all the story of this person. You need to give protection, not because you are belong that country, because in that country is war, or in that country is some dictator, so you don't have the right, or you don't have the freedom. Yes, you recognize you. But even if I am from Cameroon or from I don't know, from Ghana, I flee from my country for economy reason. But during my journey in the desert, I become a victim of torture, of violence, of abuse. My condition is totally different. So we need to recognize this situation, this story of these people. That's why we need to protect them. When he arrive in Europe, we need to give them, maybe yes, you are not political refuge, but you need a protection because you are victim of this all violence.